Hi, I'm Bonnie Compton, child and adolescent therapist and parent coach, and I want to welcome you to my Parenting with Courage conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about dads. I know it seems I talk about moms a lot, and I am a mom. I work with many moms, but I also work with dads, and I often write about moms. And well, I wrote my book, Mothering with Courage, for moms. But today, we're going to give dads some attention and love because they need it, and they play a big role in our kids' lives. All right. So I'm going to give you a little bit of research. Research has shown that even before birth, children who have an involved father are much more likely to be emotionally secure, be confident to explore their surroundings, and as they grow older, have better social connections. So I've invited my guest, Jeremy Schneider, to join my conversation today. Jeremy is a marriage and family therapist, husband, and father of 16-year-old twins. He's also a writer and has published many articles and is the author of Fatherhood in 40-minute snapshots. And I just have to show you all, this is one of my favorite books, and you can see how much I've marked it. I highly recommend getting it, and we're going to talk to Jeremy about it. So welcome, Jeremy. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm curious, your childhood played a big impact on how you wanted to be as a dad or didn't want to be, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I had a pretty terrible childhood, not to make light of it, but it was pretty traumatic from about birth to about 18 years old.
And your full childhood was traumatic.
Correct. So it was a series of people and events that caused a kind of consistent level of trauma through pretty much when I was 18 and my mother cut me out of her life. And so, you know, the big thing for me was really to try and figure out not just who I didn't want to be, because I think that's important, but it doesn't leave you with a place to go. It just leaves you with a place not to go.
That you don't want to go, right? Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that's as effective, obviously. And so what I tried to do was to kind of, create my own blueprint for being a parent, and kind of figure out what was it that I needed as a kid that I never got, and how can I give that to my kids when they're going through difficult times.
Right. And one of the quotes in your book that I love is, my goal should not to be give them the childhood I never had. I must provide for them what they need.
Yeah.
And that's a huge distinction, right?
And it's a challenging distinction, because I'll give you a good example. Sports. I'm a huge sports fan. And growing up, sports was probably the only area of my life that was good. I was good at sports. I played sports. It gave me a sense of confidence. It helped me feel part of something. It helped me feel connected to other people because we would play together. We're on the same team. And, I was hoping that my kids would be into sports as well.
Right.
And it quickly became clear that wasn't going to happen.
That they're not. In fact, you said in your book that sports saved your life.
That's one of the things I absolutely believe. It was so influential in giving me something good, of something that I felt, hey, I can do this. Something where I felt a part of something where I had felt so alone in almost every other area of my life.
And also that you mattered, right?
Yeah. And then that what I did made a difference.
Right.
Which was also not something I experienced at home.
At home, sure. Well,
and so I just want to swing back to my kids on that. And so one of the things that happened was I really wanted them to be into sports.
Right.
And I was able to realize they didn't need sports like I did.
Right.
And so they had all of these other things. They had a better home. They had a better foundation. But, they're very smart. They're great readers. They're artistic. There's all these things that they can do that gave them that confidence and comfort and sense of connection and belonging, in addition to just being with us. And I realized I can't push sports on them because, they don't need it.
Well, you could have pushed sports on them. Absolutely. You chose
True.
not to, right? We've seen
Correct.
many parents out there pushing sports on their kids, and, because they loved it growing up, or the dad who loved playing sports wants to coach their son's t-ball.
Right.
What do you mean you don't like? Yes, you're
Right.
going to love it. You're going to love it. Well, one of the things that I talk to parents about a lot is that we take our childhood into our parenting, often unconsciously.
Absolutely.
I know I did. I came from a pretty dysfunctional family also, with lots of trauma. And I decided my kids will never experience what I experienced, and I'm going to create the perfect childhood for them. Well, that comes with a price to pay for myself and them, right?
Yeah.
So that wasn't healthy. And so one of the things I do with parents is, as I say in my book, is clear your past so you can parent in the present. And so, you were very aware when you thought, what do they need? Not that you're going to give them what you didn't get.
Right.
So I love that. So in your book, you talk about when you became a dad. And, a lot of dads think, or a lot of parents think, oh, you just become a mom, a dad, and you fall in love with your baby, your child, and all is well. And, you kind of figure it out as you go along. And I've talked to many dads who are like, I was scared to death. I didn't know what I was doing. And so how was it for you initially as a dad?
I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And, our kids were born a little over 10 weeks premature. And so they were 2.5 months early. So I didn't even have 9 months to kind of get acclimated. I only really had 7.
Right. To read those books or whatever you were going to do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that's probably one of the best parts about pregnancy, is that at least there is a bit of a transition,
right.
From the moment you find out you're going to be a dad,
sure.
to the moment you find out that it's twins, to the moment that they actually are born.
Right.
There's at least a few months, and I was able to use some of that time to kind of just get myself a little bit more mentally prepared.
Sure.
But yeah, I was terrified. I was so scared of either not knowing what to do because I didn't have a lot of experience with kids,
sure.
or just doing the wrong thing and hurting them in some way that would last them forever.
Right. You would just screw your kids up completely, right?
Correct. Correct. And I'm sure I did anyway.
Yeah, we all have. We all have. They don't come with instruction manuals. So,
no.
One of the things that I talk to dads about, and you mentioned this in your book, is, a mom, and particularly if she's carrying this child within her for the 9 months, really has that bond, whereas dads don't get that opportunity. And, and then once the baby's born, especially if the mom's nursing, they're nursing a lot. And so there's more bonding going on, and what happens, to dads. So you talked about this in your book, and I love that you became the night watchman. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Honestly, that may have been one of the best things I ever did as a dad. And so what happened was, my wife was at home, so she was with the kids all day. Mm-hmm. And I only saw them maybe if they got up in the morning, and when we had dinner together, and then it was time to go to bed because they would go to bed early.
Sure.
And what was happening was that my wife was getting up in the middle of the night, or I was getting up in the middle of the night, or we would end up, frankly, arguing about what to do in the middle of the night.
Right. Or who was getting up.
Right. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody is thinking rationally. Right. These decisions need to be made ahead of time.
That's not a good time to have a conversation, right?
No. Yeah. And so, and one of the things that we realized is my wife has more trouble when she doesn't get enough sleep.
Sure.
And if she's going to be with them all day, she kind of needs to be on for most of the time, except when they're taking a nap. So,
sure.
For me, and I do a little bit better without sleep. And so we decided that I would be the night watchman. And what that meant is I put them to bed at night. And if they woke up in the middle of the night, when they woke up in the middle of the night, I was the one that went upstairs and I handled it. If they were crying, I handled it. I soothed them. I put them back to bed. If they were sick, I took care of them, whatever it was.
Did your wife wear earplugs? Because was she a sound machine?
I actually, we figured out a way to just essentially take the monitor and turn it really low on my side.
Okay.
So she didn't hear it as much.
Okay.
And that really helped.
Yeah.
And I think what that did was, particularly because I wasn't around during the day, I think it's really important for dads, or really the other parent, so to speak, to essentially demonstrate to our kids that we can meet their needs.
Right.
And so, my wife is breastfeeding them. She's changing their diapers all day. She's feeding them all day.
Right.
She's playing with them and everything. They didn't really understand sort of my role, right? Like, she was great. She did all these things. Right. What do I do? And
what do you bring to the table?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but I think that was part of it,
Sure.
And so, for me to be able to have the ritual of putting them to bed at night, reading them books, calming them down, putting them to bed, and being there when, and the truth is, in the middle of the night, we're all a little desperate when something goes wrong. But when you're, babies and toddlers, it's so much more confusing and upsetting. And so for me to be there for them in that time of need, I think really dramatically changed the nature of our relationship.
And I would imagine your confidence level.
Absolutely. I mean, it just made such a huge difference for me.
Sure. When I work with families, dads will, bless you. Dads will say to me sometime, I come home from work, and especially if the mom stays home with the kids, and I come home from work and I want to spend time with them, and they want mommy. And it's like they're, joined at our hip. And you need to be the fun dad for a while. Let them see a different side of you rather than you come in, all right, come on, your mom said to get ready for bed, and all that stuff, So and once they begin to shore up that relationship, that's when the kids will turn to them also,
Yeah.
You also talked about parenting being a team sport in your book. Is a great concept. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Of course. I mean, it's funny. There was an example of this yesterday where, or over the weekend, where my wife said something to our son about what time he needed to be in bed on Saturday night.
Okay.
And separately, I had said what time he needed to be in bed on Saturday night. And when we talked to each other about it, we realized we both had said the same time.
Oh.
And it's just that sense of that we're on the same page, that whether we're together or separate, we're sending the same message to them about what the rules are, about what the consequences are, about what a relationship means, about what we mean by being there for you and loving you, all kinds of things. And so, that's been a challenge, and we've certainly had our ups and downs. It's, it's been over 16 years. So obviously all of that did not go perfectly.
Right. Absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
But I think that that's something that, is really hard. And I talk about this in the book also in an earlier article where, I talk about the role of parents kind of crushing the role of partners.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really something that's hard to remember. That's important. Who we are as partners is how this family came to be, right? It's the love that my wife and I have together is what created these children.
Right.
And if we lose that connection and partnership, we're not going to do as well as parents, and our family isn't going to be the way that we hope it can be. So, it's the tending to our relationship that allows us to also be better on the same page and communicate more effectively.
Right. Hal Runkle of Screen-Free Parenting, I am one of the certified leaders of Screen-Free Parenting, and he talks about you are not responsible for your children, you are responsible to them. And one of the things you're responsible to them for is healthy relationships
Yep.
within the family,
Yeah. And it's just so easy to get lost in the role of parent, because obviously it's important and huge, and
Right.
it has a much more urgency to it.
And it's
always
full
like,
time.
oh, we've got, right. And it's like, oh, we got date night. Oh, but something's happened. Let's put off date night.
Right.
You never say, oh, I've got date night. We're going to put off the kids. Like it's hard to do that, but we need to carve that time out for each other.
Absolutely. Yes. And yeah, for sure. I tell parents, one day, this may be hard to hear, but your kids are not going to be living with you forever.
Yep.
And what are you going to do when it's just the two of you sitting down for dinner?
Right.
So you're not
and what
cultivating that relationship, nurturing it. Yeah.
Right. And what's going to be left?
Right. Well, that's where we often see divorces, right? And you're a marriage and family therapist,
yep.
so I'm sure you have seen your fair share.
Yep.
The other piece about parenting is a team sport, which I love, because there's the give and take on a sports team, right?
Yep.
And you're there to support each other. And although when I talk to parents, I say, you're not always going to be on the same page, but can you respect each other? Can you talk about things, discuss things away from the kids, but present a united front?
Yeah.
And you may not agree, but rather than coming in, whoa, wait a minute, and undermining the other one, because kids are very smart and they're very manipulative, and that's not a bad thing. And that's when we end up, as you know, as a therapist, with triangular relationships. When there's three in there and it's parent, and a child, there's trouble. So team sport approach. I like that. I would like your thoughts about connection with your kids from, just kind of a broad overview. You talked about when you were the night watchman. That was definitely a connection. Are there a few tips or things that you can think about that have helped you stay connected to your kids? Things you've done with them or said?
Yeah, I think just quickly on that point, I think one of the most interesting and I found actually enjoyable parts of parenting is how the way that we connect with our kids changes over time.
Yes.
So, for instance, when they were really young, we could just read a book together.
Right.
And that would be this bonding time for us. They're 16. We don't sit together. They don't sit on my lap. Right. They're bigger than I am, first of all. But they don't, they can't sit on my lap anymore, and we don't read a book together,
right.
So it's like, what do we keep doing as it shifts? And I think that was one of the best things. And what I really learned is we just have to be so engaged with what interests them.
Yes.
It's kind of the same thing we talked about earlier, but what I'm interested in is not as important as what they're interested in. And I don't mean that I'm not important, because I am, and my interests are important. But in terms of connecting with them, sometimes it's a much more effective way to get involved in what they're interested in. And one of the things I've really enjoyed is just having them teach me the things that they love, whether it's music or a TV show or a book or, my son drums, my daughter sings, they're getting into musical theater and they do performances. And so just letting them kind of teach me about it, and then coming in, responding or being a part of it or asking questions about it. There's such a powerful connection when they're sharing something that they care about with you, and you're there receiving it and welcoming it, because it's essentially accepting them for who they are. And right. That's what we all
acknowledging them. Yeah. And when parents often ask, so how do I raise my child's self-esteem? I said, help them master a skill, or better yet, allow them to help you master a skill.
Yeah. Right? I think the power of letting them teach us is ginormous.
I agree.
I think about being a kid. There's so much you don't know, and you think this parent, this mom or dad, knows everything, And
Until
to
they
be able to,
become a teen, and then you realize they don't.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And for them to be able to teach us, it's so empowering for them.
It is.
And, you know, and it's helping them learn how to interact with adults. It's helping them be able to articulate their feelings and their thoughts. But
Right.
it's also just fun. I mean, it's a great bonding time.
Right. And I think, again, I'm a mom of 4 adult kids now, but finding what I call the soft time when they want to connect, when they want to share, and it may not be on your timeline. It's not going to
Right.
be on your timeline. It's probably going to be when you're busy. And as I always say to parents, if you're busy, say, you know what, I really want to hear this. Give me 5 more minutes or whatever. Don't,
Right.
sure, hold on, let me, you know, because they see right through you.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not going to want to connect when you do, you know,
Yeah.
chances are, and being open to what they want to do. Yeah, so that's great. Well, one of the other things, as I say, that the digital devices that have been designed to connect us have actually disconnected us, I believe. So how did you, and are you handling it with your kids with digital devices?
It's hard.
It is.
It's a real challenge. It's something we talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important things we did is we don't allow phones in their bedroom.
I like that.
And so, you know, when it's time for bed, they say goodnight to their friends, they plug their phones downstairs,
Mm-hmm.
and they go up to bed and they can read, you know, maybe they have a Kindle or something, but
Sure.
it's, you know, it's not, they can't communicate with it. They can't, you know,
Right.
text anybody or anything like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And we set it up so they can listen to music in their rooms, because I think we've always made music an incredibly high priority in our family.
Yeah.
So I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to take away
Sure.
the option to listen to music and help self-soothe themselves to bed at night.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
you know, they don't need all the other distractions that comes along with the device at night.
Right.
And, you know, it's still a battle. I mean, we've been doing it for several years now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they will periodically still test that
Right.
just to
Sure.
see if we're still serious.
Yep. That's what they
And
do.
then
Right?
they find out that we are, and
Are you going to be the
they
parent
go
they
back
need
to
you to
doing it.
be? Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's, I think, one of it. I, you know, to be perfectly honest, in terms of how we manage it during the day, I don't think we do a good enough job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we're still working on.
Right.
I feel like it's more of it's like a moving target, you know, that we keep trying to adjust depending on what's happening or how they're using it and things like
Sure.
that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, you know, as I say, technology is not going away. These are not bad, evil things. Although Steve Jobs apparently never gave any of his kids any of these devices because he knew the addiction factor was built into
Right.
them. So it's
Yeah.
like, thank you, Steve Jobs, Apple, and all the other ones, not just Apple, that have done this.
Yeah.
But parents will often say, especially with teens, they throw their hands up and like, I can't do anything. What am I supposed to do? Chase them through the house and get it? No. Who's paying for the data plan? Who's,
Right.
you know, with responsible behavior comes privilege, you know? So anyway, yeah. And I think it's something you don't want to take it away because you want them to learn time management,
Right.
how to manage
And that's
their screen time.
right. And that's, I think, the hardest part. And that I work on a lot, is just trying to help them to understand, you know, that distinction between I can manage this device and this device manages me.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Can you put it away and watch a TV show or at
Right.
dinner, right? At dinner, we never allow
Sure.
devices.
Right.
You can't have your phone. You can't
Mhm.
look at it. You can't respond to a text or answer a phone or anything like that.
Right.
So, you know, you can get through dinner. You can go to bed at night. You know,
Right.
how can you set aside other time to just let your phone just be and
Right.
be where you are?
Right. And I think I think in terms of nutrition and integrative nutritionists that I've talked about, I love this concept, crowding out. So crowding out the junk food, crowding out the processed food, crowding out. So with digital devices is crowding out the just mindless time on that.
Yeah.
But it's got to be replaced with something because
Yeah.
I was talking to a teen one day in my office, and she said, you take any teen's phone away from them, you might as well kill them, is what she told me. She said, you have cut off our social lifeline. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
So anyway. And, the other thing is kids are watching, right? Kids watch us all the time. And so for parents out there listening, be aware how much you're spending on your own phone, on your own digital device, your computer, in front of the TV or whatever, because this is no longer parenting. Do as I say, not as I do. Or I'm the parent. It's like, no, thank goodness the paradigm has shifted. That's been thrown out the window. So you are your kid's first role model, and they are one.
Yeah. So. We can't say I'm an adult, I get to use it differently. It just doesn't.
It
doesn't
and
work.
Your credibility is zip at that point, and lack of respect on your kid's part.
Yep.
So I love one of your chapters at the end is, how do we find out our grade? Like, so many times we've all thought that.
Yeah,
it's a perfect title and question. So, one that we often wonder, but we don't know, do we?
Yeah. And I guess what I was trying to show in the book is that, yes, we don't have a definitive answer for how they're going to turn out and what they're going to be like when they're hit 30 years old and, sort of are on their own.
Right.
But I think we can see in the things that happen and in the things that they remember about what we've done together that, okay, so some of the stuff that we've talked to them about has made an imprint upon them. It's affected them. They remember that. And so I tried to include a few stories about kind of moments where I looked at what my kids were doing and went, oh, okay, I think this is a good sign that we're doing what we need to do. We're moving in the right direction. Yeah.
We're on track here. And I think the other thing is, which is hard but important, is not to depend on our kids to validate us as a person, right?
Yeah.
Or as a parent. And I think this is where parents, and we all fall into this trap sometimes, parenting out of our own anxiety. What if my child fails that course or that grade or whatever? How does that reflect poorly on me as a parent?
Right.
I didn't make sure they studied. And then you just try to control your child even more. You will study, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know our grade, but you begin, especially as they get older, as you're experiencing, and my kids are grown now, and some of them have kids of their own, like you'll begin to hear snippets of conversations that you had with them, or things, your wisdom, your knowledge you imparted on them.
Right.
All of a sudden they begin saying it. Now, some of the stuff they don't, and they totally disagree with, and that's fine.
Right.
It's like, oh, they actually were listening, or that meant something. A couple of years ago, we were at one of our daughter's weddings and on the beach afterwards, I think the next day, and the kids were all laughing and having these great memories of when I used to take them to the mall, because it was in the dead of winter. Where do you go to get out?
Right.
Can't go outside.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I would take them, and they got to go to the candy shop and pick a little bag and mix jelly beans or whatever, or a different kind of candy, and they'd see how much and they had a limit how much they could get. And they're as an adult laughing about that, fond memories.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Those are the grades that you.
Right.
And then I'm now a grandmother, so I get to watch how
they parent.
And someone said, oh my gosh, they must call you all the time for advice since you're a child and adolescent therapist, parent coach. I said, no, they're doing it their own way. But and they will call some, but one of my daughters said, I always think to myself, what would mom do? So,
that's cute.
which was very sweet. So, So in closing, finishing here, now that you are a dad of teens, two of them, and in the stages of beginning to let go, although I think letting go goes throughout, from
goes longer these days,
to preschool, all sorts of things, letting go.
Right.
Is it hard to let go?
I think about when they go off to college,
Mm-hmm.
and I find myself more sad about that
Mm-hmm.
than I had anticipated, say, 5 years ago,
When you're really in the trenches, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I was looking forward to that time with my wife and
Right.
kind of having our own life back, so to speak.
Right.
But I like my kids so much.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I love my kids, but I like them so much.
Yes.
And we have so much fun together
Right.
that I think that's going to be a really hard adjustment. But in terms of letting them go, I mean, that it feels like a natural progression for me, in the sense of, this weekend they got their driving permits last week.
I was going to ask you about that.
So
2 of them at one time.
Yeah, so I took them for their first driving lessons on the weekend. But again, I think this is going to be another bonding experience. The three of us, what we call ourselves as Los Tres Amigos,
Yes,
the three friends. And so, sitting in the car and talking about driving and learning about driving together. And, this is such an important moment, but it's an exciting moment. I remember driving and learning to drive and just loving it, that sense of freedom that it gave me. And so, it's easy for me to see these opportunities, even though, yes, we're in the process of giving them literally the keys to freedom that they didn't have before.
Right.
But it's also another opportunity to build a stronger connection.
Sure.
And so, yeah, that's going to keep looking different, and I won't have as much time with them, which will definitely be sad for me. But, I like where they're going, and I like who they're becoming. And so, helping them kind of be able to lift off, it just feels part of the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to share with you, I won't say the best is yet to come, but it's really neat when your kids go off to college, whatever they're doing, and they come back. And yeah, there's some that's like they're used to being independent. What do you mean have a curfew kind of thing, that kind of thing. But you begin to have this adult relationship with them.
Yeah.
And, one of our daughters said, Mom, I'm always so surprised when I say, because they come, we see them throughout the year, but they come and stay with us. We live in Charleston, South Carolina, so they all come 4th of July. And my friends will say, you're actually excited about going to see your parents? And she said, you don't know how many people of my friends don't like their parents. They don't get along.
Yeah.
And so
that's so sad to me.
It is very sad. And both you and I came from a dysfunctional, traumatic family.
Right.
And so we understand the importance of that relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I love when our kids come. So anyway, I when I'm working with parents, I ask them, what is your goal for the future? Well, what do you mean? Especially, not to pick on dads here. We're giving dads love today, but some who are more military.
Right.
Do you want them to contact you when they move out of the house? Do you want to see them? Yeah, of course. Well, you better start working on this relationship now. you know, because if someone's barking orders at you, do you want to be around them? Not really as an adult. No. So anyway, well, I thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining me. And joining
it was my pleasure. This was lovely.
Courage conversation. If parents want to, well, obviously, parents, you do want to pick up this book, which they can tell them where they can get it.
So they can go to my website. It's www.jgs.net. So my name is Jeremy G. Schneider. Okay. So it's just my initials, jgs.net. And there's a link right there to buy the book. And also, just for your listeners and viewers, I have a free ebook of a collection of stories, and that they can just download for free. And that's also available on my website.
Okay, perfect. Thank you again. And parents, I want to thank you for joining our conversation. My name is Bonnie Compton, and you can check out my work with families on bonniecompton.com. And if you like what you've heard today and are looking forward to more conversations, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Bonnie Compton. Thank you. Take care.